In a quiet village surrounded by golden fields and dusty roads, there lived an old potter named Hurry. Every morning, as the first rays of the sun touched the earth, Hurry could be seen sitting outside his small hut, his hands covered in clay, shaping lumps of earth into pots, cups, and vases. His wrinkled fingers moved with grace and rhythm, a dance he had done for decades. Yet, behind that steady motion lay a quiet sadness. Once, long ago, his pottery had been admired across nearby towns. People travelled miles to buy his handcrafted pots, each one unique, each one telling a story of patience and care. But times changed. Factories began producing shiny steel utensils. Plastic cups filled the markets. Hurry's handmade clay pots were no longer in demand. Now, few villagers bought his pots, and even when they did, it was out of pity, not appreciation. He barely earned enough to buy his daily meal. One afternoon, as Hurry sat outside his hut trying to sell a few pots, a young man stopped near his stall. He was dressed neatly, polished shoes, a clean shirt, and a small backpack slung over his shoulder. His name was Arav, an engineer visiting the village to survey land for a new factory. Arav examined one of Hurry's pots closely. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely. "You made this yourself?" Hurry gave a tired smile. "Yes, with these hands." "But beauty doesn't sell anymore, young man. People want cheap things that look new, not old-fashioned art." Arav nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes it's not the world that forgets the art. It's the artist who forgets his worth." Hurry chuckled bitterly. Worth. These days, my worth is a few coins a day. You live in cities. You have education, machines, and big dreams. I'm just a potter. What can I do? Half laughing, half hopeless, Arav looked around, noticing the rows of unsold pots collecting dust. "Tell me something," he said. "Do you make pots because you have to, or because you love to?" Seriously, reflective tone. Hurry hesitated. "I used to love it. But love doesn't fill an empty stomach." Quietly, sadly. The young man smiled gently. "True. But love, when used wisely, can fill 1,000 stomachs." Optimistically, Hurry frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Curious, doubtful. Arav continued. "Your art is dying not because it's useless, but because you haven't found a new way to share it. Maybe it's time to see your pottery not as tradition, but as innovation." He placed a small note beside Hurry's stall and walked away. On the note were 5 words. "Don't change your art, change your view." That night, Hurry couldn't sleep. He lay awake staring at the note beside his bed. Change your view, but how? He wondered. He looked at his old clay wheel, cracked, worn, but still spinning faithfully after all these years. Then suddenly, a memory came to him, his father's voice. "Clay takes the shape of your imagination, son. If your imagination is small, your pot will be small too." Hurry sat up, wide-eyed. He realised that for years he had been creating the same kind of pots, plain, simple, unremarkable. Maybe the problem wasn't the people. Maybe it was him. Maybe he had stopped imagining. The next morning, Hurry did something unusual. Instead of making traditional pots, he began to experiment. He carved designs inspired by the rising sun, the flowing rivers, the dancing peacocks. He painted them using natural colours, red from the earth, yellow from turmeric, black from soot. Each pot told a story of his land, his people, his past. He placed them outside his hut with a hand-painted sign. The Story Pots, art that speaks. At first, villagers laughed. Who will buy painted pots, they said, chuckling as they passed. But a few travellers stopped. They admired the craftsmanship and bought some as souvenirs. Word spread quickly. More people came to see the story pots. Even local shopkeepers began ordering them for decoration. Hari's business grew, slowly but surely. Weeks later, a car stopped near his stall. The door opened, and out stepped Arav, the young engineer. Hari's eyes lit up. "Ah, my young friend! Look what has become of my work!" Arav walked around amazed at the transformation. "These are wonderful," he said. "You really changed your view." Hari laughed, full of life again. "Yes," he said joyfully, "and my life changed with it." Arav smiled. "You've turned your craft into a message. That's what true business is, giving people meaning, not just material." Months passed. The factory Arav was building finished construction. Tall, modern, and filled with the hum of new machines. One day, Arav sent a message to Hari, inviting him to visit. When Hari arrived, he stood frozen in surprise. The canteen, the hallways, even the office walls were decorated with his story pots. Each pot stood on a wooden pedestal, shining under the soft lights. Beneath every one, a small card told its story. Sunrise of hope, the flowing river, hands of the earth. Our employees and visitors stopped to admire them. Some even took photos beside them, smiling. Hari watched quietly, his old eyes brimming with emotion. He turned to Arav and whispered, "You did this?" Arav smiled modestly. "I told my company about your art. Now your pots are part of our culture wall, reminding everyone that innovation begins with imagination." Hari's voice broke. Tears filled his eyes as he said, "You've given me back my pride." Arav shook his head gently. "No, master. You gave it back to yourself. I only reminded you where to look." They stood there in silence for a moment, the old potter and the young engineer, two creators from different worlds bound by the same truth. Years passed. Hari's pottery business expanded beyond the village. He taught young artisans how to blend traditional art with modern design. He encouraged them to tell their own stories through clay, to see not just pots, but possibilities. Tourists from cities began ordering his story pots online. Hari's small hut had become a bustling workshop, filled with laughter, creativity, and the earthy smell of wet clay. For the first time in decades, Hari wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. One day, while attending a business fair in the city, Hari set up a small stall filled with his colourful pots. A young woman stopped to admire his work. "These are amazing," she said with genuine excitement. "You must be an artist." Hari smiled warmly. "No, my dear," he said, chuckling softly. "I'm just a potter who learned to see differently." She looked puzzled. "See what differently?" Hari's eyes softened. "The clay," he said, "and myself." That evening, as the fair wound down, Hari spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Arav, older now, sharper, confident, walked toward him with a smile. They greeted each other like old friends. Over a cup of steaming tea, they sat together, watching people pass by. Arav leaned back and asked, "So tell me, old friend, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?" Looking at his clay-stained hands. "That success isn't about changing what we do," he said slowly. "It's about changing how we see what we do." He paused, smiling gently. "I thought I was just making pots. But I was really shaping stories, shaping lives, starting with my own." Arav nodded, deeply moved. "You've become more than a potter now. You're a creator," sincerely, admiringly. Harry looked down at the lump of clay on his hands. He turned it gently, feeling its softness. Then he said quietly, "We're all made of the same clay. Some of us just forget that we can reshape ourselves."